Rant-Time with Jordan. Is this mic on? The mic is live. Alright, we are ready to go. Foodie talk. Alright. On the radio, let's stop footing. Yes, this is AI. Keen to get started. Pump those ratings up high. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Alrighty guys, welcome back to another episode of Airtime with Jordan. I'm your host Jordan Faso, and today we're just going to review round 2 really. It's done and dusted, another full weekend of footy, barring the 2 expansion clubs, Gold Coast and GWS. They're no longer going to be the expansion clubs once Tassie comes in, of course, but yeah, those 2 had the bye this week, so we'll go through the, just go through some of the games from this week, probably not all of them as in equal detail. I'm not that interested in the Port Adelaide and Richmond one, for example, but apart from that, I think, let's get started, and let's start with our power rankings, our weekly power rankings here on Airtime with Jordan. So, rank number 1, no shift from last week, is the Brizzy Lions. GWS, number 2, they had the week off, so no movement there for me. Hawthorn, I've got 3rd again. No shift, so not much movement at the top of the leaderboard, but here we go. We've got a little bit of it. I've put Sydney up into 4th, so I know that I'll go into their game a bit more later, but I know that, they've only won, and they're 1 and 2 now, so why am I putting them up? But I think, given the strength of their schedule to start the season and how they've performed, I don't think they've pretty much proven to me that they're going to be thereabouts again this year. Geelong, I've dropped a spot after their performance on the weekend to 5th, nothing drastic. Collingwood stayed the same at 6th. Adelaide definitely jumping up my board. I was high on them to start the season, and they've gone up to 7th in my power rankings this week. Freo, I've dropped a spot. I'm not going to completely overreact to their start to the season, but not looking amazing. And then Port, I've got same position at 9th. Carlton, Gold Coast, the Bulldogs going 10th, 11th and 12th in the power rankings. They're all, no change from those guys. The Saints, I've put them up 2 spots because, that was a pretty impressive win on the weekend. I know that they've done that to Geelong the last few times at Marvel, but and that could just be an outlier. But I'm putting them up a couple spots here just to see whether they take things, I think. And then Essendon, very bad performance against Adelaide. I'm dropping them a spot down to 14th. Melbourne, same thing against North, dropping them a spot. They're 15th now. North Melbourne, they're going up 1. They've climbed out of the bottom 2 for me. They've leapfrogged West Coast, who are now, of course, 17th West Coast. And Richmond just chilling down the bottom by themselves. I don't think I'm going to be shifting them all that much this year, unless they show me a bit more than West Coast can. So, that's where I'm at with the power rankings. I think, probably a bit more context on those, some of the movement teams, once we get into the review of the games over the weekend. But I think pretty fair. I'm not going to, as I said, I'm trying not to overreact too much to things, and just stick to my prize a little bit, especially early on. But I think, you got to make some incremental changes here and there. So, that being said, let's get into our next segment for the week. It is Rant Time with Jordan, and this week on the agenda, I have fans just harassing and aggressively harassing. I don't even know what it is. They're players. So, that the whole routine posting of that big chieftain in the crowd above the players' race, giving his own club a spray, just feels a bit dated to me. You don't look tough. I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. When the players are coming off after a poor performance and they've just got some dickhead in the crowd just yelling at them. So I think that as long as it doesn't reach spitting levels, it's probably not the worst thing. But it just, I don't know. You don't look tough or patriotic to your club. It's just honestly looks pathetic. You just look like a bit of a piece of shit, to be honest. And I loved the one on the weekend. If anyone saw, when Melbourne obviously had a bad loss to the Kangas, and Maxi Gawn just was death staring this guy that was kept chirping all the players as they came off, and chirping is probably a bit light. He was just abusing them, and I really hope that Maxi either scared him or just really made him question what he was doing, because it just, I don't know, there's just no real place for that for me in the game. I think I'm all for booing, talking a bit of shit in the crowd when the game is on. Obviously not stepping over any lines, but I understand footy's an outlet for people, myself included at times, and I've definitely chirped all them players over the years, and yeah, so sorry to any Hawker whipping boys if you heard from me up on level 4, but you can't let your emotion. There is a line, and you can't let your emotions get the better of you and run that high. It's a game. It's done. They lost. Sort of get over it, I guess. And also for this guy on the weekend that was the Melbourne fan that was doing it, you go for Melbourne bloke. Like, surely you're used to this by now. You've only been in training for disappointment your whole life, basically. So I don't know. Anyway, just be normal. It can't affect you that much. Have fun at the footy, and if they let you down that much, stop paying for tickets and, I don't know, go watch the Melbourne Storm or just do something else with your time, because it's a bit embarrassing when I see things like that. And I don't think that there's really much place for it in the game, and I think that everyone should do better in that regard. And yeah, I think, as I said, you can boo and you can like yell stuff out in the crowd or whatever, as long as it's not too over the line or whatever, but yeah, once it feels like aggressive or abusive, then yeah, that's just a bit stupid, especially when it's your own team. Like, what are you doing? So that's my little rant for this week. Just calm down with those sort of big dog above the players, abusing them sort of actions. I'm not a fan at all. So yeah, I think that let's leave it there for now, and let's see what I'll have to rant about next week. And yeah, to start today, get straight into the reviews. Going to go through the Carlton and Hawks game. Do it in order of the round. Let's start with the Blues. Look, I'm not really in panic mode just yet. If I'm Carlton, I wasn't really after week 1 either. They lost to Richmond in a game that, obviously we know they should have won. We all know they should have won that game, but they didn't. But I also don't think the difference is that big. They're not in a hole at this point or anything. They're 0-2 when they should have been 1-1 probably, and it's. Yeah, as I said, they're not in a complete hole yet, but it's not looking amazing either. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There are issues, and I spoke about it last week. They just don't really have any elite kickers on the ground, and I think that's really something that obviously, it's called football. You need kickers, but I spoke about it last week, and their brand of footy just feels a bit unsustainable with the lack of, guys that are able to hit targets consistently, especially in traffic and things like that. So, the blueprint from Carlton at the moment is that they just need to defend their asses off to win games and win as many clearances as possible, so they, in turn get as many scoring opportunities as possible. And I understand that the defense sort of side of things, they might be able to hold up a bit. They've got obviously Jacob Weedering, who's an absolute gun. Jordan Boyd, once he comes back, everyone knows how big of a fan I am of his, but yeah, when he comes back, he's going to be able to help with the defense part of it, and then maybe that frees up Adam Saad a bit more, just like from a purely structural perspective, and allows him to get off the chain a bit more and get some of that overlap run from the back half that I feel like they're missing at the moment. But the mids just need to lift their disposal game for them to have any sort of chance at contending for finals this year. And I love my stats and digging out ones, but this isn't even that convoluted or that intricate. I think that it just really conveniently sort of illustrates my point. They're obviously a team that's capable of winning clearances. Tom De Koning's been unreal to start the year. Paddy Cripps is Paddy Cripps, but they're second in the league across the start of the year in terms of clearance averages. But they're not capable of retaining possession they can win it well, but and then get the ball moving forward. But they're second in clangers for the year and dead last in disposal efficiency. So there's no real point in winning the ball at that high of a rate, which they're doing very well at the moment. Arguably the best in the competition. They've played 2 games. The only team above them in terms of clearances are Gold Coast, and they only played 1. So bit larger of a sample size there, but yeah, there's no point winning the ball at that sort of rate if you are unable to retain it. So they're absolutely their own worst enemy right now, the Blues, and the fact that they are winning the ball at the rate that they are definitely has me holding on to a bit of hope, right? Like, not every team has that sort of ceiling of being able to get the ball moving in terms of out of the centre or around the ground in clearances, but unless they can find some sort of blend of skill to help aid that, not aid it, to accentuate the clearance differential that they're going through at the moment, then unless they're able to find that sort of skill on the outside, then it may just become a bit too late to turn this around. And yeah, I think that, like I said, there's good signs there from the Blues. Like, if you're leading the league or up the top of the league in clearances, that's something to hang your hat on, and I don't think that necessarily drops off. It's just are they going to be able to like deliver the ball inside 50 and effectively enough to give themselves a chance to score? And everyone's sort of been talking about how their method of attack is just bombing the ball down and hoping that Harry and Charlie can play well enough and grab enough marks to kick a winning score. And that obviously worked for them to some degree in 2023, but that's a long time ago now. And to be fair, we haven't seen Harry and Charlie play together yet this year, so they're still waiting on that. And I'm interested to see what happens to Brodie Kemp when they do both play together, and I hope that he stays up forward. But I think that unless those two can absolutely have monster seasons in terms of contested marks, then it's going to be hard unless they can pick up their skills a little bit around the ground, the Blues. So that's sort of where I'm at with them. I'm not going to panic just yet, but the warning signs are there in terms of their disposal. So let's keep an eye on it as the season goes on, and hopefully they can improve it this week. I think they play the Doggies, so that'll be an interesting one on Friday night. Now, on the Hawthorn side, I'm not going to talk about them for too long, but they had to fight in this one. So again, that's credit to the Blues. It was a wet weather game at the G, and eventually it came down to a few moments against the flow of play. Massimo D'Ambrosio was amazing yet again. John Newcomb is just emerging as probably a top 5 stoppage player in the game at the moment. He's involved in everything that the Hawks are doing through the middle of the ground. He's elite, ranking elite so far in score involvements. He's an elite tackler. But he really needs to tidy up his disposal as well. So he'd fit right in on the Blues in that regard. So if he's able to do that, then there's no reason he can't be one of the best overall mids in the game, in my opinion. And I was pretty happy with the game from John Newcomb. I really love watching him go about it. But what else on the Hawks side? CJ as well. Cenk with Jath had an awesome game, I thought, to return. He had 8 intercept possessions, 20 touches in his first game back in a while. So hopefully he's able to play some consistent footy this year for the Hawks. Especially, let's see what happens when Jack Scrimshaw comes back. But I think there's a role to play for Cenk with regardless. So keen to see how he fits into the team at full strength. But it's not a bad problem to have someone like that around the margins. So that's probably enough on that game. I'll get into the Dogs and Collingwood one, and I think you've got to start with Sam Darcy, right? Like the football world seems to be in agreement that we are probably witnessing the emergence of the next superstar forward. I think players who have the capability to tear games apart over the last 10 years or 10, 15 years all have that sort of undeniability complex in them. When they're on, there's no stopping them, no matter what you can do. And not all these guys are forwards. Like obviously Dusty and Gary Ablett Jr. are those guys. Lance Franklin as well. Quite clearly the type of mould that I'm talking about here. But Jeremy Cameron probably to a slightly lesser degree than those guys, and even Toby Green as well. That's the sort of player that generally is gonna. There's not many of them who can win games off their own boot or just impose their will on the game. But I think those guys are in that echelon and have done that to some level of consistency over the years. But I think that Sam Darcy, in my opinion, is the next one in that regard. Obviously midfielders are have strong influences on the game, probably the most influence, but I don't think that they're necessarily fully capable of ripping games apart on a consistent basis like a big key forward, especially like a generational type one like Buddy or Jeremy Cameron type to a slightly less degree than Buddy. I'm not going to suggest that Jeremy Cameron is in Lance Franklin's tier of legend, I guess, but Dusty and Gary Ablett Jr. were able to rack up 40 and put 2 or 3 goals on the board as well, so I think that those guys deserve a mention here. But I'm sort of getting off track a little bit, but my point is that Sam Darcy, I think that we are seeing the next best player in the league come into his own this season. Nobody is really going to be able to beat him in terms of like getting as high as he can and like reaching the highest point of the ball in marking contests. So it's going to be, defenders are going to have their hands full for a lot of years now, and it's going to get even worse when he bulks up. Like obviously right now you might have the ability to take him out of the contest if you can get a body on him, and I think that the Pies did that to some degree, but there's going to be a lot of challenges dealing with him, and yeah, I said it before the season. He sort of feels like that Wayne Carey type of power forward, where he's like just as good on the ground as he is like in the air, and his hands are amazing too. So there isn't much of an answer, and he is willing to play in the ruck too, which I love. He can get in amongst it, and if the game's not going on his terms, he's happy to go into the middle and throw his body around. And could not be higher on Sam Darcy. I think that we absolutely are looking at the best player in the league for probably the next 5 to 10 years. So yeah, keen to see how he keeps developing, and the ceiling is very high with Sam Darcy, I think. Also on the Dogs, Ed Richards, really good, very good player. The Dogs could use probably 2 of him for the second time this year. I'll repeat that, but yeah, he's just showing, like, without Bontempelli and Treloar there right now, how important and how good he is. I think he's standing out more than he ever has, probably just due to the absence of those guys. Obviously Jack McRae not there anymore either to rack up the disposals in the midfield, but yeah, Ed Richards, very good player. Collingwood, on their side, they are very good, I think, despite the umpires, being somewhat questionable in their favour, especially in the last sort of 10 minutes there. I think that the Nick Dacos falling out of bounds one is going to be talked about, well, probably has been talked about, but yeah, that one was a clear mistake by them, and that they were the better team. Don't get me wrong, they absolutely won that game, and they won a close one. So maybe the close game pies are back, but yeah, Nick Dacos, I think worth mentioning how awesome his game was. Had 39 touches. He's gonna die from sprinting, I think, around the ground, and yeah, just a great game from him overall. But the one thing I'm just gonna keep harping on it with the Pies is, like, do we want him inside? Like, I don't know. Are we worried about his kicking yet? He went at 50% against the Doggies, and yeah, by foot that is, and yeah, I just think that he's better used as a half-backer or a winger. Like, I don't know. I guess you want him racking up as many touches as possible and feeding it out to guys. His handball game is very creative as well. I understand all that, but I just feel like he's so good by foot when he has time and space, and I feel like his running just kicks up to another level when he's playing off in those positions. And I don't know. I feel like, obviously, when everyone's playing in tight, their kicking goes down, but it's his best skill. Like, why wouldn't you use that to maximise it? Especially when you get Jordan DeGoey back this week. So, yeah, I'm still a little bit not concerned, because I know he's a good kick. Like, I think everyone objectively understands that. It's just like, well, when are we actually going to realise that his best position maybe isn't inside mid, and let him use his creativity on the outside instead of limiting him as, like, just an accumulator and ball winner, and yeah, let the other guys do that work for him, and then he's going to punish teams even more. So I think that'll, if they do that, it's going to translate to better results, in my opinion. But I'm probably nitpicking here a little bit. They're 2-1. You can't really be mad if you're the Pies, and shout out to Tax. Your boys are looking good, mate. Essendon and Adelaide. So I was pretty sure Adelaide were for real, but this game definitely cemented it. I didn't really expect that they were going to have these 2 massive wins to start the year. I don't think I could have predicted that, but then they've definitely already exceeded my expectations even. So anytime you kick 25 goals in a game, you're going to win. And I think that after a down year last year, they've found their offense that saw them lead the league in points for in 2023. So I think that they're definitely looking back to their best. Well, not best, because they also didn't make the finals in 2023, but I'm just saying, in terms of their offensive game, it looks like they've rediscovered it to a degree. And I just have to take my hat off to Rochelle. We've seen a clear difference in his play to start the year, and it's just across the board. Everything is elite or above average for him to start the year, and I'll eat crow on that one. I thought he might just not be very good, like looking at his last couple of seasons, but he's looking like he's back on that trajectory everyone had hoped for after his first season. And him and Rankin together playing at this level is something that I talk a lot on the pod about, like, having like high quality high half forwards and forward pocket players, I guess, or just small forwards in general, that medium to small hybrid type of forward that the whole league is after. And with him and Rankin together playing at this level, I think that that part of the ground, or that sort of archetype, they stack up as well as anyone in the competition, and maybe only the Lions are the only team that I think might have a better mix, or maybe GWS, but even then, like the Rankin and Rochelle, if they're going to play this well every week, when you combine that with Ben Keys too, who just provides all the pressure, I think that they've got a really, really good forward line, obviously, and the big boys up forward are looking awesome as well. And the scary thing is how willing they are to sort of spread the load. I don't know how many teams have, 6 or 7 guys. I'll name them: Rankin, Rochelle, Keys, Riley Thilthorpe, Tex Walker, Darcy Fogarty, and Alex Neil-Bullen. All of them are capable of scoring multiple goals in a game, and I think the firepower is absolutely real for the Adelaide Crows. And their back line as well is really solid, with Michael Lanny and Josh Worrell both leading the way with 4 and 3 intercept marks respectively. It's a really strong group back there, with Nick Murray and Keane as well being able to lock down most key forwards for size as well. I think that they've got a good group back there at the moment. Daniel Curtin, we'll see how he starts to progress. Haven't seen a heap from him to start the year, but it hasn't looked out of place either. And the midfield is the part that I'm going to keep an eye on, because they are getting pretty incredible service from Riley O'Brien at the moment. He's going at 35% hit out to advantage at the moment. So, and he's on a huge volume as well across the league. So, he is a perennial leader in that stat for hit outs to advantage. But, I think the teams are probably going to be able to slow them down. I think that it might be a little bit unsustainable at the moment. So, the mids are getting great service. Obviously, the mids and Jordan Dawson are obviously great by foot. So their opportunities they do get, even if it drops a little bit, it'll still be good opportunities. But I do think that the teams may be able to slow them down more than St Kilda and Essendon have been able to do so far. So, especially since St Kilda didn't even play Rowan Marshall in the ruck full time against them. So if the Crows are unable to get to that level of service from Riley O'Brien all year, which I suspect that level is a little bit unsustainable, then they'll be forced to defend more, which obviously maybe the defence looks a little bit more shaky then, and then definitely more than they've had to anyway. They're going to have to defend more and potentially not be as dominant out of the middle as well. So just wanted to keep an eye on, and just for them, I think that Riley O'Brien, great to start the year, but hasn't. It may not keep translating to that sort of service. And regardless, I am absolutely all in on their firepower up forward. It's a nightmare group to plan for, and the Crows are going to be serious threats this year, I think, come finals time. So, that's probably enough on the Crows side. Essendon, what even are you at the moment? They were just so competitive against Hawthorn the week before, and outside of Zach Merritt and Jai Caldwell, they were largely uncompetitive in this one. So it's okay to lose if you're just worse than the other team, but you can't be worse and also not try. The process is just I don't know. The process is bad. Just too many handballs compared to kicks. They're not going anywhere with their touches, and then when they do go at almost 10% worse than the opposition in terms of disposal efficiency, you're never going to win a game like that unless you have more touches with them. But they didn't. They had less touches than Adelaide. And what else is bad? Having 12 less tackles than the team that you lost the possession battle to as well. So I don't think you really blaming the young guys. Obviously, Nate Caddy got subbed off at 3/4 time, but you're not blaming him or Kako or some of the other younger guys. But they're not going to be able to lift the tide on their own, and it didn't help that they had no Jordan Ridley or Kyle Langford either. But I don't know, they're just maybe. It's hard to decipher for me a little bit where they're at the moment. I think that Essendon have been hanging on for a long time to try and make the finals and make that leap and win a final, I guess. But I think that after Brad Scott, he came out and said that they're sort of rebuilding. I don't know, reading between the lines, which makes sense. You want to build something that's somewhat sustainable, but. I think that the being a big club, there is the pressure of winning right now, and it's sort of, it feels like they're just in a weird place right now for me. I don't really know how to articulate it any better than that, and I don't know. Maybe they're just, a lot of the senior guys aren't that good anymore. Dylan Shield looks done. Mason Redmond is having no impact on the games, I feel. Ben Mackay was recruited to intercept, and he isn't even in the top 20 this year for intercept marks for a team that has, across 2 games this year, conceded 111 inside 50s for the year. So, he's obviously not doing what he was brought in to do. He was obviously taking intercept marks at North Melbourne, so I don't know what the issue is whether it's whether the way that the Essendon are structuring him up behind the ball, but regardless, he's not really living up to his paycheck. I think that's been well documented. Won't kill him too much for that, but also Nick Bryan might just be better than Sam Draper in the ruck. So I don't know, if you're Essendon, you just let Sam Draper go if you are in a mini rebuild or whatever it is at the moment, and let him go at the end of the year if he's going to go back to Adelaide or Port and get you another high draft pick with a big contract from him. And I think they're absolutely better than this performance. No doubt they showed that the week before, but this is the sort of effort I would expect from the last 5 games of the year, knowing you're out of contention, not your second match. So definitely a worrying sign for Essendon's supporters and the team in general. Not good enough this week, but hopefully they switch that up on Thursday night against Port Adelaide. So keen to see how they bounce back, and hopefully they can just show some consistency this year. I don't want to see a year where they just drop off in the second half of the year. And obviously it's week 2. I'm not going to overreact fully, but there are some definite scary signs for Essendon fans. This is the next game, the Port Richmond game. Look, I'm not going to lie, I didn't really watch this one. Nothing really from me on this game. I wasn't that keyed in. I thought Port were just going to maul them anyway. So, didn't really pay attention. And Port, what you expected them to bounce back after a 90-point loss, and they sort of evened up their percentage a bit, I guess. And, I think main thing about this is a bit of a shame that Jack Lukosius got injured. I think he fractured his kneecap, which, I don't know, sounds pretty scary to me. But hopefully he can come back before the end of the year and give them something. But Richmond, it's going to be a long, long year, as expected. Just keep playing the kids and see what you've got in them, and hope that the senior players can sort of stay healthy for you in the meantime. As I said, nothing much from me on this game. St Kilda and Geelong. This was a really interesting game to me, and I think that was probably one of the games of the round. And I think what I've sort of previously said about the Saints rang true here. I think that their top end guys are right up there with the elite of the competition. Nasiah Wanganeen-Malera and Jack Sinclair dominated the match for them. Rowan Marshall also joined that party. He destroyed Geelong in the ruck, and pretty much every time the Cats went on a run, it sort of coincided with him being off the field. And I don't know. It's hard to tell. The Saints might have games like this just because of that top-end talent. Cal Wilkie was very good down back as always, I know that a lot of people may not, watch the Saints this much, but if you do, please give Nasiah Wanganeen-Malera a watch. He is worth watching just for himself. I think he is the best halfback in the game. He's elite by foot, tough as defensively, has great hands, intercepts the ball in the air as well, and which is, he's only 187 centimetres, so he's sort of a small to medium defender, and he just controls the game like no other halfback is able to, I think. So his influence for the Saints is huge, and if he was in a bigger team, then I think the attention he'd get would be pretty crazy. So a lot of talk about the Saints throwing around money to try and get people to stay, but to come to the Saints, but I'd be throwing that money right at someone that's already in their wheelhouse, and I'm sure they already have been going through discussions with him, but I'd be throwing the absolute kitchen sink to get him to stay. Marcus Windhager as well really helped set this game up for them, and boy does he play a ferocious brand of footy. He completely took Max Holmes out of the game, and with Bailey Smith already out, the Cats were sort of, forced to find a bit of run through the middle, and they put Dangerfield in the guts, which, didn't really go that well for them, I didn't think. I think that at times, Danger tries to force it a bit, and this felt like one of those games where he was forcing it and just didn't quite work out for him. Mitch Owens looked great in his first game back, I thought. Jack Higgins, as well as the ultimate heir to the tip rat throne, so to speak, and he's always a fun watch. He's just got a lot of tricks, and for a guy that's not super athletic or anything, he's just a crafty sort of player, and very, very underrated small forward in the competition, I think, Jack Higgins. It is pretty clear though for the Saints that they need some more talent up forward, but the other parts of the ground looked pretty good on the weekend. I think Anthony Caminiti looked pretty solid down back, given it was his first game playing down there. Rowan back, as I said, full time in the ruck was sort of where they won the game in my opinion. Jack McRae gave them a lot of class around the ball that they lack between Jack Steele and Marcus Windhager. So, yeah, I think that I think the midfield they still need to bring some new younger guys through, because obviously Jack McRae and Jack Steele aren't going to hold on forever. But that's why they've got Toby Travaglia, I think his name is. First round pick for them in the VFL, played well on the weekend, so hopefully he comes in and gets some game time there for them. But yeah, a lot to like from the Saints. I don't know if this happens absolutely every week, but I think that they've just got enough elite guys that I think they're going to have some really competitive chances this year to take down some top teams. So yeah, keep an eye on the Saints for some upsets throughout the year. On the Cats side, I think nothing really to worry about. I did drop them in the power rankings one spot, but it's probably I guess I got to do that because I didn't expect them to win this game. But also it's probably more to do with Sydney too. I think that the Cats, we'll just give them a mulligan. I don't think they lose this one at GMHBA in all likelihood, but I think that is one thing I am going to monitor, is their form away from home this year. I think they may be a little reliant on that small, the shorter width of the field. But yeah, let's keep that there. Let's park it for now and just come back to that in case they do struggle away from home this year. But yeah, still some amazing things from them, I thought. I think that they played the odds pretty well against the St Kilda defence, who lacked a lot of size down back by bringing Jeremy Cameron up on the wing. They do that a lot, but I think that getting him and Ollie Dempsey charging forward at times was probably going to win the match if it went for another 5 minutes. I think that their process in that regard was pretty spot on. Jeremy Cameron was often matched up on Brad Hill and exposed the Saints a lot when he was ducking back inside 50 or charging back inside 50 when the Cats pushed forward, and then on the other wing they did the same with Ollie Dempsey and Ryan Burns. So both cases allowed the Cats to create these mismatches in deep inside 50 when they charged forward. And I think Chris Scott found that lever that he needed to pull with those moves. Obviously they do that anyway, but I think in this game specifically there was a concerted effort to keep Cameron outside of forward 50 and then get him charging back. But yeah, I think that being able to isolate those guys was a good move by Chris Scott, and I think that it was all to do with emphasising St Kilda's lack of size down in defence. So yeah, as I said, if that game goes 5 more minutes, I think the process behind that move would have prevailed. But that they didn't have 5 more minutes. They left their charge too late, and the Saints were too good early on to claw that lead back, I guess, for the Cats in the end. So unfortunately for them, not a good day at the Marvel Stadium for the Cats. Next game, Brizzy and West Coast, and I think I won't start with either of these teams, but I'll start with Melbourne and say that Melbourne would be pretty furious at West Coast for dropping the ball here in what would have caused them an absolute media storm if the Eagles were able to upset the Lions up at the Gabba. But yeah, the Eagles were awesome, I thought, in the first half and looked the better team. Ultimately, the Lions had another level to go to, but make no mistake, the Eagles made them work for it. And I'll start with my thoughts on the Eagles here. If they had anything resembling a ruckman that could have actually got them over the line in this one, there was a lot of talk about Harley Reid and him being undisciplined. 7 free kicks against, but when the game was there to be won, Big O and Lachie Neale just worked their magic together out of the centre and around the clearances. And Harley got lost in traffic a few times when he was on Neale, but it's hard to play against Lachie Neale when he just knows that Oscar McInerney is going to get the hit out. That he's more experienced in there, and it was a good learning day for Harley Reid. I thought Big O was just awesome, I thought, in that last quarter. And there was just a lot of times where Lachie Neale knew where Big O was going to put it, Oscar McInerney of course, and just almost used Oscar McInerney as to set a screen. And then when he took the ball straight inside 50, they led the game. Well, sorry, Lachie Neale led the game with 10 inside 50s as well. So he was doing a lot of damage out of his little 2-man game, I guess, with Big O. And I genuinely think that if Oscar was on the Eagles side, they'd probably win that game. It wasn't just in the centre, it was around the ground too, obviously, with his dominance there. And the Eagles were consistently on the back foot, and I thought that Tim Kelly, who was great, and Harley Reid, they just didn't really have much of a chance to succeed in the centre, which obviously is where they ended up losing it, I thought. And they had some great moments from young players despite the loss, I thought the Eagles, Clay Hall looked great for them. Someone who I haven't seen a lot of personally I just haven't seen much of him in general, but he jumped off the screen for me. He went at 80% disposal efficiency, 11 ground ball gets, 14 contested possessions out of his 15 touches, and 7 clearances as well. So it's just an awesome return for a second year player, and I reckon they've found a keeper in the middle as well to go with obviously Harley and co. So yeah, Tyrell Dewar as well looked like he was going to tear the game apart early. He kicked 2 goals in the first quarter, and also ex-Hawk legend Tyler Brockman showed some of the signs that, I quite liked him when he was at the Hawks, but I think that Tyler Brockman is someone to keep an eye on. He's super clean. He's got a lot of skill. He's pretty tough as well when he needs to be. So, their forward line looks pretty complete to me at the moment. I think that they just need if they had a ruckman, it would help a lot. On the line side, I think that there isn't too much to worry about. Probably went into the game just a bit lackadaisical, thinking that they were going to roll the Eagles at home, I guess. But, the only real concerning thing that I've seen from the first couple of weeks from the Lions, and that's probably a stretch as well, is that just the level of production from their key forwards, in the first half and largely for most of the game, the likes of, Cam Rayner and Zach Bailey and Cal Archie were pretty quiet, I thought. And I think that if the key forwards are also off the mark, then the forward line doesn't have a lot of avenues to score. I don't think that Logan Morris, Sam Day, Eric Hipwood are necessarily going to be able to bring those small forwards into the game, like some of the other elite forwards, key forwards in the competition, which can sort of be the case for some key forwards. They have the ability to obviously clunk marks, or if they create a contest and don't lose those contests, then they're going to give opportunities for the small forwards to be able to do them, work their magic, I guess. And I think that in Brisbane's case, it's generally the other way around. Once their half forwards are up and about, it brings their bigs on the lead into the game and things like that. So, I understand that bigs are always dependent on the smalls hitting them up to a degree, but in Brisbane's case, I don't think that they provide the smalls with many crumbing opportunities. They're not one of the keys for Brisbane is let me clarify. Not one of the key forwards for Brisbane has been able to win a one-on-one this year, the one-on-one contest inside forward 50. So, they really do rely on their small forwards to sort of generate their score. I think it's probably not a cause for concern overall because, if the Lions small to medium forwards aren't playing well, then they're probably not going to have a chance of winning anyway. That's where a lot of their talent is on the ground. So, that being said, I think that unless we get Logan Morris to take a big leap this year throughout the season, it does shut off a way to get their important guys going if they're not already imposing themselves on the game. But if they're going to lose a one-on-one and not break even, then it just sort of reduces the opportunities for their smalls to get going, I guess, in that way. So something to monitor for me anyway. But I think Logan Morris has the potential to get better as the season goes on. Eric Hipwood, I think we know what he is, and Sam Day, first game, so I won't sort of get on his back too much, and he's obviously at the end of his career, but brought in obviously to be a bit of a focal point and just create a contest, and hopefully they can do that more consistently as the year goes on. North Melbourne versus Melbourne. Bit to talk through on this one. I think this was sort of my fear with the D's. They just can't score the ball, and their elite guys aren't enough to sort of, just aren't good enough, or I won't say good enough, but they just don't have enough elite guys, or the elite guys that do have aren't able to drag this iteration of the D's over the line. The issue is obviously Max Gawn just got flat out beat by Tristan Jerry. I don't think that's going to happen every week from Max, but it's absolutely a sign that he's slowing down a bit. He's still going to be a top 5 ruckman in the league, but they no longer have the best positional advantage in footy. He has been way better than any other ruckman for the last 5 or so years, and it seems like my fear coming into the season of that gap closing is sort of happening a bit. I think that if you look at every other position in the league, there probably hasn't been as big of a difference in terms of the best player in that position and the rest of the leaders in that position as the ruck spot has in terms for Max Gawn. So, I don't think it really bodes well for the Ds because, Clayton had a typical prime sort of Clayton game. He had 36 touches. Jack Viney was strong. Petrarca was solid. But I just don't really know where they go from here in terms of their offense at least. And their defense was outgunned as well, which no doubt Stephen May coming back into the team is going to help down there, and I think that'll help, so bolster their defence, and they'll be fine at that end. But offensively, this is just who they always have been, and it's not really going to get any better. Cozzy Pickett doesn't solve this problem for them on his own. The one shining light in this game, I thought, was Cade Chandler, outside of obviously their elite guys who still played solid. But Cade Chandler was really good, having probably the best game of his career so far, and I do want to shout him out for that. He had 25 touches, it's gone 76%. He had 3 goals, 1 on the day, 588 metres gained, which is just a monster game from him. So yeah, credit to Cade Chandler. He's obviously one that has a lot of upside at the D's, but just as I said, I don't know where they necessarily go from here in terms of just trying to find avenues to score. Because if you take Petrarca out of the middle, put him up forward as a forward, who's going to do all the work that Petrarca's going to do in the midfield? So I think that Trent Rivers is one that we need to have a look at as well. He needs to take a bit more of a step forward and provide them with something. I think. This is that's exactly why I was concerned about the D's. They're just a bit too top heavy and not in a way where they have upside as well outside of their top guys. So bit concerning, I think. North Melbourne though deserve all the credit. They dominated this game in the fourth quarter and look to have learned from what happened last week against them when they fell over late against the Dogs. And I think we absolutely have to acknowledge that the D's are even worse right now than that iteration of the Bulldogs that the North faced last week. But North absolutely learned, which is a step in the right direction. They learned from last week, and that's what you want from a young team, to not make the same mistake twice in a row. And that's a big step for North Melbourne. I would not have expected them to win this game going into the last quarter, and they did. So really good work from the Kangas. Charlie Comden locked down that position in defence. He had 8 intercept marks on the day, and I'm sort of still waiting to see who else emerges as key defenders for North Melbourne. But if he is going to be this good, which obviously I don't think he's going to do that every week, but if he is going to be that level of guy where he is one of the sort of 10 best key defenders in the league, then you can start to make a bit of patchwork quilt of defenders around him, where you don't need an absolute pillar next to him. You don't need two of him, or you don't like some other teams do have some, over the years, like McGovern and Barras or something like that. But I don't think you necessarily need that. You can see Carlton do it with Jacob Wiedering, and then just whoever else, and you've got an awesome defence just because he is that good. So if Charlie Comden is that guy, then it sort of eliminates the question I've asked about who else is going to emerge as a key defender for North Melbourne. But Tom Powell continues to impress as well. 31 touches, 84%, 10 score involvements, 8 clearances. Just a huge game from him, and just a really complete midfielder who's looking very good to start the year. And it's going to be tough for guys to crack into this group. I really like what I'm seeing from the North Mids to start the year, and awesome win for North Melbourne, and keen to see how they go in Adelaide against the Crows. And I think that's going to be a real test to see where North are at. If they're competitive in that game, then I'm going to consider putting them, vaulting them up the power rankings a little bit, I think. But very good game by the North, and good to see that they learned from the week before. Now, the Freo and Sydney game. Not a great start for Freo for the year. Obviously, big loss down Geelong, and then losing the home opener against Sydney. But I think you have to look at the Sydney side of things, and they just needed to win this one. They were just more committed in the end. But good on Sydney for getting over the line. Just for Freo, I think that I'm just sort of waiting for Andrew Brayshaw and Jai Sarong. That's a bit insulting to Caleb Sarong, but to put a game out of reach. I never feel like I don't know. I just don't really feel that with those two in particular. I know that they're so talented. Both of them are really capable. Obviously, I think they've both been all Australians, but I don't know. Anecdotally, I'm just not sure that they have that big game, big moment sort of mentality in them where they're just going to take over a game. And it does worry me a little bit about their midfield. If they're not going to do it, who will? Hayden Young obviously missed again, but maybe he is the missing piece to provide that. I know last year he had a game-winning clearance against Essendon at the G, but I just don't know if Freo have that dog in them, so to speak, that you need to win at the highest level and in finals. They dropped off last year when they needed wins in the last 3 rounds. I spoke about that. They just needed one win to make the finals, couldn't get it done, and yeah, I don't know, a little bit of a hesitation from me on Freo at the moment. That's why I dropped them in the power rankings and did the opposite for Sydney. And I'm just not sure I can really trust them to win big games at the moment. And when you start the season in this fashion, they're probably wondering the same thing themselves. So yeah, you may wonder why on the Sydney side when they're going 1-2 and we're a Joel Amati goal away from being 0-3. You may wonder why I've thought to bump them up in the power rankings, but yeah, I think it just comes down to the fact that I think that they've had the hardest start to the year. They had like a pretty embarrassing grand final appearance, obviously, but since then they've faced three of the teams that many have peaked to finish in the top 6 at minimum this year. I think everyone probably had those, like Brisbane, Hawthorn, and Freo also in the top 6 and could even be top 4. Obviously a really tough start to the year on paper, and yeah, and for them to have chances at winning each of those games all while being under a new coach is just really impressive, I think. Obviously if they went on 3, it looks a little worse, but even then, I think that they would have been fine. They're going to get that early bye round in this round to regroup and then go again. So I think it comes at a good time. Get the win before that, and then you can sort of regroup, and you're only 1-2 to bounce off for the rest of the year. And I do think that we're going to see Sydney go on a run after this week off. They're still just so talented, and I'm going to bet on those dudes figuring out how to win games again, because they did it to such a high degree last year with largely the same group. So yeah, I still know Errol Goulden. Definitely missing him, but I think this team is just too talented to not make the finals and not have another crack at it again this year. So yeah, that's sort of why I've put them back up in the power rankings. I think when you look at everything that's stacked against them to start the year, they've done pretty well, I think, considering. So yeah, that's where I'm at with Sydney. Let's close this pod out with the Secret Star Society inductee for round 2. So the underrated player around the competition who I think has a chance of being a star of the future. Not necessarily, your rising star nominations or anything like that, but yeah, just a guy around the league who I think is a little bit not discussed to a whole deal at the moment, but has potential that he might become a household name in the future. And this week's inductee to also join Caleb Windsor as the round 1 inductee is Ruben Ginbey. So I've definitely talked about him on the podcast a bit, but mostly it's been about the Harry Sheasel trade that he was involved in with North Melbourne. But yeah, I think that this guy is legit in his own right, despite me mentioning him and Harry Sheasel in the same breath again. Anyway, so a bit on Ruben. He's drafted as a big body midfielder, stands at 191 centimetres. Made the transition to halfback last year as well, and he's remained there this year, and he's had a strong start to the season back there. He isn't elite by foot yet, but the signs are there for me that he will get there. It's more of the blend of running power, size and strength that makes me think he could be on the trajectory of being a star level player, or at least an elite role player. And he's a good contested mark for his size. He's competed well defensively in the air and on the ground, with him ranking elite in spoils and tackles for his start to the year. So really good signs defensively from him. But also he has the same amount of intercept marks as Harris Andrews for the year. So he's good for 19th in the league to start the year, which is a really good return, I think. But yeah, he's not a bad kick either, by the way, just talking on his me saying he's not elite by foot yet. But yeah, he's just average at this point. So I think that there's room to improve there, especially the more he plays behind the ball. He'll have more time and space to deliver it. And yeah, I think the positional versatility that he's showing is the main thing. He was obviously drafted as a midfielder, so maybe he goes back in there eventually. He's playing off half-back at the moment, and on the weekend, it's his 3rd year, and he played in the ruck against big Oscar McInerney, and obviously Big O killed him. Like, I'm not going to put it any other way in the ruck contest, but it's worth a look, I think. There's other teams that are obviously playing smaller guys, like Carlton played Matt Kennedy as ruck a lot of times last year, and it worked. There is a pathway for it to work where they get obviously more numbers to spread around the contest. But yeah, I think, and that's sort of what my idea is here with Ruben Ginbey. I don't think he's going to play ruck every week. I think it was definitely a circumstantial thing in that regard. But yeah, I'm pretty high on the versatility that he provides the Eagles. They don't really have another guy that's like that at the moment on their team. So, yeah, keen to track him as the year progresses, and yeah, one to watch as our Secret Star Society inductee for round 2. So, that being said, thanks for listening, guys. It's been good chatting through round 2, and yeah, we'll be back next week with another episode of the pod. So, enjoy.